welcome to my garden to talk about chickweed. I'm Maggie O'Halloran. I am the education director and one of the educators at the Florida School of Holistic Living. I have this backyard garden herbal oasis here in Central Florida. Welcome to a winter day here where I'm bundled up wearing a sweater. Thank you for joining me for a little talk about our local chickweed. Make sure to comment if you have any questions. Let me know, are you growing chickweed? Do you recognize this plant? We'll take a look at it here. You'll come on in, take a look at it. So dry Mary cordata, this is our local tropical chickweed, dry Mary, white snow, West Indian chickweed, heartleaf dry Mary, that you can sort of see where it gets its name on this little leaf here. That heartleaf dry Mary. Its botanical name is dry Mary cordata. It's in the Caryophyllaceae family, or the pink family. And it has a relative in the same family that many of you have probably heard of, also called chickweed. It's Stellaria medea, which grows in more northern climates. We get it here in Central Florida around this time of year whenever it's super cold, but we do not have it year-round in the same way that we have this tropical dry Mary cordata. This plant is a creeping herb that's found widely dispersed in damp places. You probably mostly have seen it because of those little tagalons, those seeds. If I run my hand through this, you can see that the seeds just come off. You'll find it in your pet hair, on your socks, on your pant legs. It really likes to tag along and spread those little seeds. Dry Mary cordata. It has a long history of use. It's found in tropical environments all over the world, from Africa to Southeast Asia. It's been used historically for medicinal purposes, for staying healthy for eons. It does like the tropical environment, so wet locations, like I mentioned before, but it really is okay in our more drier months here in Central Florida. And I pretty much have it growing somewhere in my yard year-round. I see it out on hikes year-round here in Central Florida. So some of the history is that this plant has been used, like I mentioned before, in a lot of different locations all over the world for a lot of reasons. One of them is to keep the soil in place. It's grown with coffee and chocolate. I have a couple of resources. I really wanted to talk and show you a couple of pictures of that Stellaria medea variety. They're very similar in their size. They're both super low growing, creeping, that really enjoy the wet climates. So these pictures are Stellaria medea. If you go into an herb store, it's likely that this is the variety that you'll see. They're roughly the same size, like I mentioned before, low growing, tiny. My local variety doesn't currently have those beautiful white flowers, but it does have a white flower, and it's not a variety you see often in herbal textbooks. But this one, dry Mary cordata, has been found in scientific studies. Research has happened in other areas of the world, not so much from coming out of the US, studying how it's been used for treatments of things like cold and headaches, bronchitis, poultices on sores, and treatment of other various diseases. including leprosy and tumors, some pretty intense stuff. This plant looks like it's a mild little plant, but it's been used for a long time for medicinal uses. This book, Rosemary Gladstar, Medicinal Herbs, she mentions that this plant has all of these medicinal uses. Another herbalist here, Rosalie de Fouet, has this list of alterative, demulcent, diuretic, expectorant, febrifuge, inflammatory, modulator, lymphagogue, nutritive, vulnerary. So when you see this lymphagogue, or many herbal texts will mention that chickweed is really helpful to the lymphatic system, and chickweed's ability to do that is partly because of its list. And I wanted to read this to you from a study coming out of African Journal of Traditional and Complementary and Alternative Medicine. If you're interested in checking out that study, there's a link to that study on the blog that we did for chickweed as our plant of the month, and you'll also find it, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to find that in the information below this video. So this has all of these activities. So this plant was found in studies to contain glycosides, saponins, alkaloids, flavonoids, phenols, and tannins. And many of you recognize some of those words. Tannins here in Central Florida, we know that's what makes a lot of our waters brown, because that's the thing that makes tea, you know, your traditional cup of tea, have the color that it has. It's those tannins. Flavonoids are a part of a plant that are usually have more nutritive value. So sometimes the flavonoid of this green color is what we know of as giving us more nutritive plants and more nutritive plants. So some of these actions, like analgesic, antipyretic, anti-inflammatory, and immune modulating, which we saw is mentioned in the Stellaria Medea variety, which is kind of cool that they're related and they have so many similarities. But we want to think about these plants possibly being used interchangeably. You know, if we're in Central Florida and this is a plant that we have available to us, growing in our backyards and taking over our lawns, we want to think about how we might be able to incorporate them into our lives. So this plant has been found to have antibacterial qualities, which we can all use more of that in our cootie found world. But those lymphatic qualities come from its ability to really nourish the body and get things flowing through the body and helping you to either recover from an illness or fight it off. So some of my favorite ways of incorporating this plant into my life are really tapping into those nutritive qualities. So we have a small list of plants that we can make as nourishing infusions. In a nourishing infusion, you're taking a lot of plant material, about an ounce of plant material, you're putting it into a quart-sized jar, and then you're filling that jar with almost boiling water, like you're, you know, making tea. You're letting it steep for about 4 to 8 hours. When it's done steeping, and you're being really careful because the glass can break when you add that hot water, so just be careful. When it's done steeping, you can either leave everything in there, put it into a soup pot, and call it a stock for the next soup you're making, or you can strain out the plant material and use the liquid, either as a tea. It can be really nice. With a lot of those more nutritive herbs, you may know it kind of tastes a little salty. It tastes like it's full of minerals, so maybe add a little miso to it and call it soup. Thankfully, chickweed, the flavor, can be a little more mild. So being able to incorporate it into other tea blends can be really nice. I nibble some of those little leaves, they're pretty tasty. That nourishing infusion I can use in not just soup stock, but I can use it to prepare rice or other things that are going to absorb that liquid. Because of the milder flavor, it kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you're adding to it. So if I have this nourishing infusion and I add it to my soup stock, that's great. Or I could add it to a nice cup of lemon balm tea and tap into those antiviral actions of the lemon balm and its flavor, and have that super nourishing chickweed to also support my body. Chickweed makes a really nice addition to any tea blend. Most of the time I'm gathering or using chickweed, I'm gathering it from my yard. To gather it from my yard, I just go out and I say, "Hi chickweed, you mind nourishing me today?" And if I get the go-ahead, then I harvest some of those wonderful nutrient-dense plants from the plant. The leaves and even the stems, all the aerial parts can be utilized in this way. So the older stems, you know, once it starts having a lot of seeds on it, these can be a little bit more fibrous. So this time of year, I might go ahead and take the leaves off. If I'm planning to incorporate the chickweed in a food preparation where I'm going to be eating what I harvest, which is my next favorite way of incorporating chickweed into my life, is just going out and harvesting some of these nice, tender, new growth. You'll see it doesn't quite have a flower yet. It's almost flowering, but it doesn't have the stalk with seeds on the end, which means that stem might be a little bit more fibrous. I would harvest those lovely new growth stems and put it into a food processor or blender and add olive oil and garlic and a few other things and make a pesto. If you want to really see how that pesto works, check out my next video on chickweed and making herbal preparations with that plant. It's coming up. Today, I just wanted to show you a couple of other methods. So we talked about making that nice long infusion. Remember, there are only a few plants that it's okay to let steep that 4 to 8 hours. Make sure that you have your good list before you try that yourself. Another way that people really incorporate chickweed into their lives is that topical application. I mentioned the poultice, and a poultice is simply taking plant material and either chewing it up in your mouth, just to get it moistened, and applying it topically. And this is fine as long as you don't have any mouth infections or anything like going on. It's a pretty sanitary way to make a poultice. Other people like to just add a little bit of hot water. You can add a little bit of your favorite oil and mash it up a little bit in a mortar and pestle. It can be a really nice way to use a topical application of that chickweed for things like an itchy bug bite or sunburned skin or something like that you want to soothe and cool. So chickweed energetically is cooling. And this is one place where our tropical variety is a little bit different from that Stellaria medea or the more northern variety. Our local tropical chickweed is cooling, but it's also a little more drying than that more northern variety, the Stellaria medea. which has a lot more moistening qualities to it. The dry Mary, much like its name says, is that it's a little bit drier. So topical application, you can do the poultice, or you can turn it into an oil. An oil, it can be a really nice way to have chickweed in your life. I recommend harvesting the fresh stuff, filling a jar. Go ahead and fill up that jar, and you can put more than I have here. If I'm making the oil, I might let that plant material sit up just for a little while so some of that moisture can leave it. The Florida variety dry Mary, it's not really a Florida variety, it's more the tropical variety of dry Mary or chickweed. The leaves are pretty dry already, so it doesn't take very long. I fill my jar with the plant material. If you're using dried plant material, I'd say only go to about halfway. Then I would fill the jar with my oil up to within 1/4 of an inch from that very top, not where it goes to the, just starts to bow in a little bit, from the very, very top, within an inch of the very, very top. And then I would cover it and let it sit for about 6 weeks, stirring it often. If you're interested in making herbal oils, there are a lot of tutorials out there on making herbal oils. We have a couple of medicine making videos in our DIY section on our YouTube. If you're interested, check it out there. And YouTube probably has a lot of other resources for you on that as well. Making an herbal oil is a great way to connect with chickweed. I can let it steep, do its herbal oil thing, strain out the plant material, and just use that herbal oil. Chickweed herbal oil can be a really nice soothing, moistening, topical application year-round, just to bring healing and nourishment to the skin. You can take it to the next step in making a topical preparation and make a salve. So a salve is basically an herbal oil plus beeswax or paraffin or something like that, so that you're making it firmer. My friend and co-worker with the Florida School of Holistic Living through Deb's Holistics has her salve that is great for minor boo-boos and bug bites and all of the things. And she starts with herbal oil and then goes through the process of adding it to the beeswax and things to make it into a salve, which is more portable and makes it easy to have access to this for my first aid kit, or in my kitchen for minor cuts and bruises or bug bites here in Florida. We need that year round, right? Any questions? So thank you for joining me in my garden, our backyard herbal oasis, as we talk about a tropical variety of what is commonly known as chickweed or dry Mary. A lot of folks here, I refer to this plant as dry Mary to make the distinction, but in some herb books for more tropical climates, if they mention chickweed, this is the variety we are mentioning. It likes the hot, wet areas of the world and would grow really easily for you. In fact, if you live in Central Florida, I'm sure it's right out your back door right now. Lots of really fun ways to incorporate it into your life. And just think about making sure that you know where you're picking it from. My neighbor's yard is covered in tropical chickweed all over the place, but we don't eat it because we appreciate it and we're glad it's there, but we don't consume it because of the lawn care service puts things on it. So we want to be mindful of that and not entering that into our bodies. Is there a question?
There's a question from Debbie that says, did you say dry Mary?
Dry Mary cordata, yep. Thanks, Deb. Drymaria cordata. So it's D-R-Y-M-A-R-I-A. Drymaria cordata. C-O-R-D-A-T-A. Cordata. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time as I make herbal pesto.